which David was serving then. The leader, Saul, he couldn't confront Goliath himself. And here, David, the youthful, vibrant, ebullient young man, stepped forward. And he said, I'm going to face him. I will face him. Everybody was stunned and surprised at what this young man was about doing. But Goliath not only was a giant, he had enough weapons, ammunition, and everything. And the lesson here is this: when you have God Almighty's consciousness, you have an awe of God's presence. This puts away the fear of size or weapon. That day, David did not see the size of Goliath, and he didn't see the size of his arms and ammunition. He trusted God, like God says in the Quran, chapter 8, verse 10. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. He trusted that God is the giver of success and victory. And whenever a man will achieve victory, he can only achieve victory by the power of God. Remember, dear listeners far and near, that day there was a fear created in the hearts of the people. People had fear in their minds due to years of seeing Goliath, the huge guy, and the enormous troop behind him. So everybody was petrified. Everybody was, in awe of, if you hear Goliath is coming, everybody goes down, man. Nobody could stand up to him. But David overcame that fear because of his trust in God Almighty. This is very, very important and profound. I want to ask you at this juncture, whom do you see as your own Goliath? Is there anyone that you fear, and you fear them like you should fear the Almighty himself? Is there anyone you have hope in, that you hope that, when this man is there, when my uncle is there, when my brother is there, when my friends are there, I got no problem? Is there anyone you rest your hope in apart from the Almighty? I'll tell you, where the power of man fails, the power of God Almighty persists and continues. In fact, there is no power that any man or any woman or anybody can have except the one that the Almighty gives himself. And this is very important here for us to note, because David saw the huge size of Goliath, but he discountenanced it because he recognized that even though Goliath might be a great giant, that is one who has made him, and that is God Almighty. And remember also that there is a moral dimension to this. The moral dimension to it is that Goliath that day represented tyranny, he represented oppression, and he represented arrogance. Whereas David, on the moral ground, he represented and he stood for the truth and justice. And of course, he stood for humanity. So that when everybody was afraid of having a face-off with Goliath, David saw himself waxing strong on account of his trust in God Almighty, the Creator. So I ask you, dear listeners, dear friend, who is that Goliath that you are scared of? Is there anyone that you are afraid of? Is there anyone that you are scared of? Is there anything you are petrified? You are rented by fear of moving even your legs, of moving even your lips. You are afraid of the presence of that person who had dominated the warp and the woof of the horizon with his dominance and his fear. Drop the toga or the gate of your fear today. And remember that beyond every great man, beyond every great woman, beyond every great whatever, there is one who is greater, and that is God Almighty, the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And if you have him by your side, everything is going to be all right. It's going to be fine. Now, if you look at the story of David and Goliath, like I told you in Quran chapter 2, verse 251, we can draw a comparison between this incident and the story of Moses and Pharaoh. And I know quite a number of times we've discussed the story of Moses and Pharaoh here, because Pharaoh stood for tyranny. Pharaoh stood for the same oppressive hegemony that Goliath stood for. But when God sent Moses to Pharaoh, Moses ab initio was afraid. He was afraid. How am I gonna get along with this guy? This guy's a tyrant. He's gonna kill me here. Moses felt this feeling of fear in him. But God reminded him in Quran chapter 20, about verse 36 and following, that I am with you. Inni ma'akuma asma'u wa ara. I am with you and Aaron. You and Aaron, go and tell Pharaoh